Yep. Okay, Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Hey, good evening, everyone. I'd like to now call to order the regular City Council meeting of Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. It is now 8:01 p.m. I'll ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could you please confirm for me, Madam City Clerk, that we do have a quorum for the record? Quorum for the record?
Sure, Mayor. Yes, we do have a quorum this evening. We have in chambers Councilmember Steph and Councilmember Wolfley, and virtually we have Mayor Pro Tem Boafo and yourself, Mayor Adams.
Hey, thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask, are there any agenda additions, deletions, or amendments? Hearing none, we'll move on to citizen participation. Do we have any citizen participation this evening?
No, Mayor, there's no one signed up for this evening.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go to presentations. And we will do the first proclamation.
Hold on, Mayor.
Were you-
Yes, we'll get him for you. Hold on one second.
Okay. Are we? Is Miss Madeline along with us?
Mayor, Councilmember Gardner is not here yet, so Councilmember Steph and Councilmember Wolfley will be reading the proclamations and presenting them.
I think we have.
That's fine. Please go right ahead.
Councilmember Gardner just arrived.
Thank you. Yes. All right. Thank you, City Clerk. Okay. Thank you, council members. Thank you. Hello. Well, my apologies for slight tardiness. Good evening, everyone. In honor of Dr. King's Day, of National Day of Work, not a day off, but a day of work and giving back, I'd like to talk with you briefly before I present this proclamation. And the purpose of my wanting to discuss this is the importance of the mission that we accomplished on Dr. King's Day. It was well received by the community that the council voted to maintain or open up our city services, such as our recreational facilities, our ballparks, our golf course. But we wanted to be careful in doing this and making sure that our residents, who are our friends and our neighbors, were also safe. And under the direction of Madeline Long and her firm, which is known as MEACO Konnect, we were able to do just that. And the support of my council colleagues, Councilmember Wolfrey, Councilmember Esteve, and Councilmember Harrison, we were able to accomplish just that. But before I go into reading this proclamation, I'm going to ask that Ms. Madeline Long come forward and talk about what she does and how important what she does is for our community as a whole. And I want to let you know that Madeline Long has been a long-term Bowie neighbor, resident, and I want to thank you first for coming forward and volunteering your services, your product to our neighbors and friends here within the city of Bowie. I want to thank you for that, and I'm going to let you say a few words, and then I'm going to present you with this proclamation.
I asked our MEACO scholars to join me because everything we do is for our youth. I want to thank the city of Bowie, the council members, but a special thank you to Council Member Gardner and to Councilwoman Ingrid Harrison. They didn't just support the city, they supported the work that we're doing in the community. This virus has decided that it is going to basically take control of our community. It is going to take all hands on deck if we are to bring an end to the virus. But more importantly, it's going to take you. It's going to take us. And if I didn't have the support of the council, I couldn't do the work that I'm doing. I don't stand here alone. I stand here with my partners, our foundation, Konnect Foundation, with our partners, EXP, that provided air quality purification at the Party HQ. I stand here with all of our partners. It is because of the work that they've done that I get to stand to receive a proclamation, but not for me. I received that proclamation on behalf of our organization and our MEACO partners and my church family, Victory Grace Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Thank you. Thank you so very much. And I want to tell you basically what we did on Monday. Under the direction of Madeline Long and MEACO, Konnect, we distributed to the city of Bowie, to our neighbors, 500 plus at-home test kits for COVID, as well as hand sanitizer, and mask to our neighbors. And it was very well received. There were a number of residents, neighbors who have continued to send over thank you letters of support. And you know what we know now in this pandemic, that it's just been about neighbors helping neighbors, because we are all in this together. And we all have to pick up that shovel, pick up that rake, and get to work and working on this pandemic. And you know, I want to say this. There are many of us who are frustrated and tired and overwhelmed by being in captivity and being in close quarters. And then there are those of us who want to go out and live our lives. And you have that option. If you aren't feeling to where you are safe or secure, then you have that option to stay at home. But if you want to get out, we ask that you wear your mask. We ask that you social distance, and we ask that you are vaccinated. But, you know, vaccination, some people may choose not to be vaccinated, and that is their right as well. So we want to support everyone and meeting everyone where they are. So in doing that, under the direction of Madeline Long and MEACO, my council colleagues and I supported the distribution of 500 plus test kits, masks, and hand sanitizer. And this is the City of Bowie, Maryland, a proclamation of the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, recognizes Ms. Madeline Long and MEACO Konnect, LLC, for their outstanding community service. Whereas Madeline Long is a visionary on a mission to help save lives, where Madeline is often referred to as the health crusader. having worn many hats in her arenas of organizational management, technology, and healthcare. Madeline's most recent and most rewarding position is the position that she currently holds as chairwoman of MEACO Konnect, which is an organization which has been created to address the economically diverse communities in providing technology and healthcare, housing, agriculture, and training. Okay? Madeline Long is also a fellow with the National Leadership Academy for the Public Health, designated representative by the state of Maryland, selected by Johns Hopkins University Medical Center to reduce cancer disparities among women of color. Her company goes beyond just leveling the playing field. She actually rolls up her sleeves and gets involved and meets people where they are. Madeline Long and MEACO Konnect provided COVID tests and at-home rapid tests, KN94 masks to 500 plus Bowie residents, and now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council for the City of Bowie hereby recognizes Ms. Madeline Long and MEACO Konnect LLC for their outstanding community service on Dr. Martin Luther King Day of Service, January 17th, 2022. Introduced and passed and presented by the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, at regular meeting on the 18th day of January 2022, signed by Mayor Timothy J. Adams and our City Clerk, Awilda Hernandez. Thank you, Ms. Madeline Long. Thank you. Thank you. And Councilwoman Ingrid
Thank you
Harris.
so very much for your service.
Thank you so much.
Cindy appreciates all you've done.
Thank you.
And I just want to present this proclamation to you on behalf of our council member Todd Turner from the County Council, District 4, and it's signed by Todd Turner and Council Chair Calvin Hawkins. So thank you so much for your service. We appreciate you.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much, Ms. Long. Thank you so very much. We definitely appreciate all that you've done in the community and all that you will continue to do. You have the full support of this body. Thank you so very much. And thank you, young people, her interns that were out there that day too, pardon me with my mask, who were out there that day helping. We're very grateful. It's always good to have young people involved and understanding that you too make a difference. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Long. Thank you. Now, Ms. Long had...
Our second proclamation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thank you very much. Who do we have scheduled next? Party HQ. Do we have representative? Yes, we do. Yes, we have the manager from Party HQ. And if I could have that council member come forward.
Hello, and thank you. Thank you very much. I want to start off by saying thank you, of course, publicly, personally, but also for the community at large. Without a location, without a central place, these sorts of things cannot happen. We greatly appreciate you lending your efforts, your resources, your facilities for us. It really makes a difference, and we do, I know, have a lot of folks that have expressed their gratitude to us on the behalf of the city. But we want to thank you specifically for your efforts. So thank you very much. We have a quick proclamation for you as well. Whereas Party HQ is local business in Bowie, Maryland, and the owners and staff of Party HQ are committed to community service, and that is legitimate. This is not a first-time, one-time incident that accidentally happened. This is, I think, a continued commitment on the part of your organization to be an integral part of our community, and we greatly appreciate that. Therefore, be it proclaimed that the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland hereby recognizes the owners and staff of Party Headquarters for their outstanding community service on Dr. Martin Luther King Day of Service, January 17, 2022. Thank you so very much. Do greatly appreciate it. We also have a word from the Honorable Todd Turner, our council member, District 4, for the county council, unable to be here this evening, but he wanted to extend his gratitude and appreciation as well. And we have a proclamation from him too. So thank you very much. It is more than just the community in Bowie, but also serving the broader community in the county. So thank you very much. I'm sorry, I had planned on being there, but I was going to be, I was out of town for the weekend, but I did get back from constituents and others of the great work that you guys have done, and very much appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And now, at this time, thank you again to Party HQ, and now we're moving on to the proclamation for Ruby's Southern Kitchen.
Perfect. Do we have someone from Ruby's here tonight? Come on around. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm so glad you could make the time. All right, so we've got a proclamation from the City Council of Maryland recognizing Ruby's Southern Kitchen for their outstanding community service. Whereas Ruby's Southern Kitchen is a local business in Bowie, Maryland, whereas the owners and staff of Ruby's Southern Kitchen are committed to community service, whereas Ruby's Southern Kitchen supported Madeline Long and MEACO Konnect LLC in assisting with the testing for COVID-19 and distribution of at-home test kits, and K95 masks to 500 Bowie residents. Now therefore be it proclaimed, the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland hereby recognizes the owners and staff of Ruby's Southern Kitchen for their outstanding community service on Dr. Martin Luther King Day on January 17, 2022, introduced and passed and presented by the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland at our regular meeting on the 18th day of January, signed Timothy J. Adams, Mayor. And we also have a proclamation from Councilmember Turner, which states much the same thing. Be it hereby known to all that sincerest congratulations and best wishes are offered to Ruby's Southern Kitchen for the work and support they provided to Madeline Long and MEACO Konnect with testing for COVID-19, distribution of at-home test kits, and K95 masks to 500 Bowie residents on MLK Day. We really appreciate your service to the community. We really appreciate your business, and we wish you much continued success, especially in this incredibly difficult time.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so very much.
We adjusting it,
As Henri knows, we are very appreciative to be in the city of Bowie. We are grateful to have the support of the community from the time that we opened throughout the pandemic. The city has been 2,000% behind us, and so it is our honor to be able to do what we can to give back to community, to give back to the community and its residents. And I think that's all I'd like to say. All right, thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
We now are moving on to the next proclamation, which is for Simply Bowie Magazine.
Wonderful. Hello. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right. I'm pleased to present the proclamation from the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, recognizing Simply Bowie Magazine for their outstanding community service. Whereas Simply Bowie Magazine is a local business in Bowie, Maryland, and whereas the owner and staff of Simply Bowie Magazine are committed to community service, and whereas Simply Bowie Magazine supported Madeline Long and MEACO Konnect LLC, assisting with the testing for COVID-19 and the distribution of at-home test kits and KN95 masks to 500 Bowie residents. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland hereby recognizes the owner and staff of Simply Bowie Magazine for their outstanding community service on the Dr. Martin Luther King Day of Service, January 17, 2022, introduced, passed, and presented by the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland at a regular meeting on the 18th of January, 2022. signed by our mayor, Timothy J. Adams, and Awilda Hernandez, city clerk. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
And I'll also share with you that Councilmember Todd Turner, as he has with everyone else, presented a certificate of recognition to Simply Bowie Magazine for your work and support you provided on Martin Luther King Day of Service. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you. I was happy to help. I am the owner and publisher of Simply Bowie Publications, so I was very happy to help on that grateful day with Henri Gardner and Ingrid. And I'm happy to serve the community as well with the publication. Have a great evening. Thank you.
And thank you again for all you do for our community. We now have a proclamation, the next one for Howell Funeral Homes.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I wanted to make a side note, make a side statement. Veronica Fountain of Simply Bowie Magazine, she neglected to tell us that she's really modest. She built her magazine from her home here in Bowie, and today she is in 55,000 circulation, right? 55,000. Yes, very good. Very good. 55,000 subscribers. Very good. Very good. I love to hear things like that and all the great things that businesses are doing here in Bowie. Definitely, definitely. Yes, Mr. Mayor, you want the next proclamation is for? You did mention it? Okay, yes, Howell Funeral Home. May I have Miss Joan Howell and her daughters, her lovely daughters, please come forward. Now, as you all know, and we know, Dr. King preached and believed and taught us to loving and giving to it hurts, and being definitely community-oriented. And it does take a community working together to getting us through some of the most difficult times of our lives. This has by far been my most difficult time. It has weighed on me both emotionally, physically, as well as financially. But together we all are still standing, and that's because of God. That is definitely because of God and good people today that has come out and helped rid our community of this evil and very dangerous and deadly disease. But I want to talk to you about Howell Funeral Home. Howell Funeral Home answered my call on a number of occasions when the unfortunate circumstance happened, when lives were lost due to COVID. And many families were unable to pay for funerals because they came unannounced. They weren't planned. And some families lost 2, 3, or 4 members within days, hours, weeks apart. And it took a toll on them financially. I reached out because a number of people reached out to me asking for support if there were any government funds available. And no, we do not have such funding in the city of Bowie. But what I've been able to do in knowing that I'm not here elected just to sit up here and legislate, but also to utilize my platform as an elected official to help others who are in need, to help everyone who's in need. And I had a number of residents, neighbors, and friends to call me and say, council member, I'm unable to bury my loved ones. I'm unable to bury my wife, my son, because I can't afford it. I simply can't afford it. It really weighed on me heavily. I have to share this with everyone. It weighed on me heavily when people phoned me and told me that they were unable to cover the cost of burial for loved ones, and having to deal with that after having just lost your mother, and then weeks later losing your brother. And we all know someone here in this room that we've lost from COVID. I personally have lost a number of family members and friends. And When I called over to Howell Funeral Home to Joan's husband, Willie Howell, who is unable to make it tonight, Joan and I have known each other for some time. They answered the phone and they buried a number of people at zero cost. I want you to hear this, zero cost. They didn't hesitate. They buried a number of them at zero cost or either drastically reduced the cost of burial. That is beyond a blessing. That shows where your heart is. And Dr. King talks about community and loving and giving, because you didn't have to answer those calls, but you did. And I thank you for that. And the city of Bowie and my council colleagues, thank you for that. And the families, the many families, thank you for that. And I want to read this. The city of Bowie, Maryland, a proclamation of the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, recognizes Howell Funeral Homes for their outstanding community service. Whereas Howell Funeral Home is a family-owned business serving the Baltimore metropolitan area since 1998, the family has 3 funeral homes, 2 in Baltimore and 1 in Columbia, Maryland. The owners of Howell Funeral Homes and the Howell family, since the beginning of the pandemic, the Howell family has provided their services at a drastically reduced cost, or in some cases, for no cost at all, to many families throughout Maryland, including those in the city of Bowie, who lost loved ones to COVID-19 with little or no means to cover the cost of a funeral. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, hereby recognizes the Howell family and Howell Funeral Home for their outstanding community service and their true love and compassion for their fellow man. Introduced, passed, and presented by the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland at a regular meeting on the 18th day of June, 2021, signed by our Honorable Mayor, Timothy J. Adams, and our City Clerk, Ms. Wilder Hernandez. Thank you so very much. If I may. Thank you. I have one other to present from our distinguished and honorable County Council member, Todd Turner. Prince George's County Council Certificate of Recognition, be it hereby known to all that sincerest congratulations and best wishes are offered to Howell Funeral Homes. The Howell family provided at a reduced cost or at no cost to many families throughout Maryland, to include Bowie and other areas of Prince George's County, who lost loved ones to COVID-19 with little or no means to cover the cost of a funeral. I wanted to take this day out of the greatness of things that Madeline Long and Party HQ and Simply Bowie and Ruby Southern Kitchen, you all represent what community is about, coming together in times of need and meeting the challenges of humanity, working together. And Howell Funeral Home, you are exactly what Dr. King preached of. And I thank you again from the bottom of my heart. I thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. If you may, Ms. Jones, say a few words, just briefly. Yes.
I think he summed up everything already, so I just want to say, on behalf of the Howell Funeral Home and myself, we'd like to thank each and everyone in Bowie who entrusted us with their loved ones at their final disposition. Just want to say thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
If I may, and pardon me, Mr. Mayor, and I know we need to get on with the rest of the agenda, but I definitely wanted to acknowledge all the greatness that's in our community and that's in our hearts. So if I could get everyone organization that was recognized, if you would stand up together and we could take a group photo. And I like to hold this for my personal memories, to cherish this as we move forward in our lives. But again, I want to thank each of you, from me, from my colleagues, from Mr. Mayor and the residents and neighbors of the city of Bowie, I am definitely, truly grateful and appreciate you each. We have a couple paparazzi out there in the audience there. Yeah, we have several. So everyone, just by all means. Now, okay.
Everyone smiles, you can tell. Show those teeth.
Say cheese.
Smile, a little show in your eyes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all. Thank everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Detroit.
Thank you, everyone, and please be safe, and we appreciate all that you do.
And
We will now move
if you'd
on.
like to leave, everyone, you may do so. And if you'd like to stay around for our meeting, you may do that as well. But definitely. Oh, Party HQ did bring some for our colleagues and some of the other volunteers. They wanted to give out gift cards as a gift from Party HQ to the volunteers. Thank you. Thank you very much. I did get your text on that. I'm so sorry. Yes, by all means. All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, everyone, and we do appreciate all your support in the city. At this time, we will move on to city boards and committees and committee appointments and the swearing in. Ms. B. Scott was interviewed on January 3rd for appointment to the Diversity Committee. Council concurred to appoint her to the committee as a regular member for a 2-year term. I ask now that we please move to appoint her.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's moved and properly second. All in favor, respond with an aye.
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 Opposed, same favor. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Ms. Scott?
Is the candidate present this evening?
Yes, she's coming up, Mayor. Ms. Harrison, I think I put the proclamation, the certificate there, if you don't mind. Ms. Scott, if you just stand there and... Mayor, do you have the oath with you?
I do, but Michael seems to have it. Go right ahead, Michael.
Okay.
All right. If you'll raise your right hand for me, and then I need you to choose one. You can pick swear or you can pick affirm. Which one do you like better? Affirm, great.
Okay.
I, please state your name.
I, Andrea Scott,
Do affirm
do affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will be faithful
and that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland
and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and the laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and ability,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of
execute the office of
regular member
regular member
of the, and you can state your committee name,
of the Diversity Committee
according to the Constitution and laws of the state.
according to the Constitution and the laws of the state.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
There used to be a singing portion to that.
Yes.
Hey, congratulations to you.
Congratulations. Thank you so very much.
Congratulations. We will now move on to council announcements. Do any members have any announcements at this time?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Wolfie?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Thank you. A couple quick things. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody again for the efforts yesterday. It's really so nice to see everybody contributing to the community. As I said, I apologize I was unable to be there in person, certainly there in spirit. I was out of town for the weekend. But I do think it's wonderful to see the commitment to the community, both to the town as well as to the county and the broader community at large. So it's great to see such wonderful contributions, not just on days like yesterday, but we see them throughout the year, and we do thank everybody for their support. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just a matter of decorum. I want to apologize, Mr. Mayor. Last week I trampled over your closing remarks in adjournment request, so I apologize for that as well. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you for that, Councilman. All right. Moving along, any other council announcements at this time?
Mr. Mayor, is it appropriate to speak on the Jessica Thicklin acknowledgement at this time?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that our Bowie Youth Council Chairman, Shelamiah Griffiths-Johnson, shared the devastating news about the loss of Mrs. Jessica Thicklin, a beloved school counselor at Samuel Ogle Middle School. She played an instrumental role in Shelamiah's life, as well as many other students. He said she did not accept failure, but saw every child as an investment in our country's future. Her death was a blow to the school and Prince George's County Public Schools. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for providing an acknowledgement via proclamation to the family. We all extend our heartfelt condolences to her husband, Jerome, and her parents, Lazarus and Audrey. Thank you, Shelamiah, for speaking at her funeral on Saturday and for being such a wonderful inspiration. God bless the family. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd just like to add, as I watched the services, the outpouring of love, support, and Shelamiah, we appreciate you and all you do. And to the family, our heartfelt condolences, and to all, the students, friends, we feel your loss. Thank you. Are there any other council announcements at this time?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I've been informed and asked to talk tonight for a minute about the loss of another community treasure. Some of you will know the name Fannie Bason. She was about as close to living Bowie history as you can get. For those who knew her, you'll understand why I will ask for just a moment to quote a Capital Gazette profile that was done on her 6 years ago in 2016, titled, "During 96 Years in Bowie, Bason Has Seen It All." And it points out that at the time, at 96, she was 102 when she passed away, and still attending Huntington Heritage community meetings remotely. Fannie Bason was born on her family's farm near the Bowie racetrack in the year 1919. That was the year Prohibition began, the year the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote, the year the Boston Red Sox sold Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees. She lived in the same house on 11th Street, where she would welcome, I think, just about anybody who wanted to come over for a cup of tea, including me on several occasions. She lived in that house since the year 1924. That was the year the Washington Senators last won the World Series, the year J. Edgar Hoover got named the head of the FBI, the year Calvin Coolidge delivered the first radio address from the White House. Fannie was an incredibly special person. She was a founding member of the Huntington Heritage Society, which has done some incredible work in Old Bowie. She was one of the nicest human beings you will ever meet. always had food, always had a kind word, and even at 102 years old, still remembered names, remembered details about people's lives, and was just one of those people who had an incredible gift for making everyone feel incredibly special. And it's very sad we have lost Fannie. My thoughts and prayers are certainly with her and her family, and I know I'm joined by all of my colleagues in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member, and our condolences as well. Are there any other council announcements at this time? Hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Sorry, Mayor, you skipped over city manager's report.
I apologize, City Manager. City Manager's report.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll forgive you. I would like to say one thing about the water discussion we had at our last regular meeting. And to inform you all that I've directed the Public Works Department to begin the design of a no less than a 3.5 mile pipe replacement as opposed to a 2.5. Of course, we'll be needing your support and the rest of the council when it comes around to the funding of that. But I wanted you all to know that's what we're planning on, and that was the direction I gave to Public Works as a result of the consensus from that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, City Manager, and I'm glad to hear that.
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to ask the city manager a question. City Manager, if I may ask, you said you're, instead of 2.5 mile, you're doing 3.5?
Yes, what the plan that's in our budget that you all approved was for the second phase to be 2.5 miles.
Yes.
But instead, after the discussion, I've given them direction to start the design for that phase to be 3.5 miles.
Okay. And Mr. City Manager, and then which part of the city again?
Well, I'd have to check that. I can send you an email on that without.
Okay.
Right
Yeah,
now,
that's
but
fine.
it's,
That's fine. That way I can.
We're looking at specifically where we would like to be able to arrange so that we can focus on the hot spot areas that exist, as if we can do that in a sound engineering and spending of the money. But we're looking at that right now, so we don't know exactly where, but we want to focus in on the areas where the brown water is really the worst.
Okay. All right.
If possible.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you. I'll look forward to your email.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
That's good. Yep.
Is that it, City Manager?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now be moving on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, the motion carries. We will now move on to, I see no old business. Is that correct, City Clerk?
Correct, Mayor.
We will now move on to new business and the economic development strategy in progress briefing. I'll turn it over to city staff at this time.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, John Henry King, the Economic Development Director. In September, we signed a contract with the Jacob France Institute, which is an entity under the University of Baltimore, working in partnership with Margrave Strategies, which is a limited liability corporation here in Maryland with a breadth of experience in strategic planning for economic development. They are performing for the city a multi-phased study and preparation of the economic development strategy and action plan. The results of that first phase are going to be presented to you tonight. The principals, the leaders of this team, are Dr. Richard Clinch of the Jacob France Institute and Mr. Bill Cole of Margrave Strategies. I'm going to turn things over now to Dr. Clinch to introduce the rest of his team. At the end of this presentation, we will have a public hearing, and after the public hearing, we'll of course entertain questions from council to follow up either public comment or the question or presentation. Dr. Clinch. You're muted, Richard.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Is the presentation showing?
Yes, it is.
All right. So I can't see you all and give the presentation, so I'm just going to, I'll be missing visual cues. So if you need to ask me a question, we'll need to just ask it. So I'm going to go in to the presentation now. As John said, the goal today is to really introduce the team to you, but more importantly, present some of our key findings. So we're going to begin with team introductions. We will then do it. Are the slides moving, just to confirm?
Yes.
Good.
Richard, in full screen mode?
We'll then present the key findings of the first two tasks. In task one, we did a baseline
Richard,
business and economic
Richard, can you enter full screen
in
mode?
Task two, we engaged with numerous stakeholders in businesses, in the community, and City Hall about economic development. We'll then go into our SWOT analysis of kind of summarizing the findings in terms of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We're going to present some of our preliminary and early ideas on where the economic development strategy should go, and end with questions. So in terms of the team introduction, I'm Dr. Richard Clinch. I'm the director of the Jacob France Institute. We're the sponsored research unit of the Merrick School of Business at University of Baltimore. I did the economic development strategy for the city back in 2001. Margrave Strategies. Bill, do you want to say real quick a little bit about your group?
Sure, Richard. Can you, while I'm talking, can you move this to the presentation to full screen?
But it was.
Present from the current slide.
Is it?
That's fine. Thank you again, Bill Cole, partner at Margrave Strategies. I'm joined by Jordan Montoya and Katie Gerbis. You'll hear from Katie in a few minutes. Our team is thrilled to be working on this with Dr. Clinch and with your team in the city of Bowie, and are thrilled to be part of this great project.
All right. So, in terms of the project overview, we were hired back in fall. We had the kickoff meeting in September. We presented the results of the task one kind of baseline business assessment, kind of looking at the quantitative data to the Economic Development Office back at the end of November. We're just wrapping up task two, which is stakeholder engagement, and we're going to integrate all of this into a SWOT analysis, the preliminary results of which we're presenting tonight. And the last and final step will be going into the development of the city's strategic plan, some of our initial ideas of which we'll present tonight. This is a timeline for the project. So we started in September. We're wrapping up stakeholder engagement. I think we only have 2 left to do. We've done 19 to date, have 2 or 3 more scheduled, and really we'll be starting in the next 2 weeks and into February, writing the economic development strategy for the city based on the data we've collected to date. So in task one, we assessed the size, structure, and performance of the city's economy, the composition of the city's business base, the current historical and future demographic and economic statistics kind of shaping the city. We assessed the city of Bowie's retail capacity. We did a high-level analysis of commercial space available, and talked a lot with the state and county about county and state programs to support economic development. And again, we'll be integrating this into a SWOT later. So we have a lot of data in the report, but John asked me to keep the presentation short and sweet tonight. So there's a lot more slides in the back, and there'll be a lot more tables in the report, but we're just going to hit the high points tonight. So a lot of the other data will be available in the appendix or certainly in the report when we produce it. So really kind of focusing on the quantitative assessment of how the city's economy has done over the 2013 to 2019 period. The city added about 700 jobs, 652 jobs, growing at about 4%. Unfortunately, while it's slow and stable growth, it lagged the state, county, and peer municipalities. We selected, in terms of peers, to look at College Park, Greenbelt, Hyattsville, Laurel in the county, as well as Annapolis and Crofton in neighboring Anne Arundel County. So again, the city's had slow and stable growth, but kind of lagging some of its neighbors. The city's economy is changing. We did a very deep dive into the size and structure of the city's economy, and that's the table 2 on the bottom right-hand side here. And what you can see is what types of industries where employment changed. And what you've seen is you've had very strong growth in the healthcare sector, administrative services, and professional services. But you've had declines in retail, accommodation, and food services, which is unique because the county is doing quite well in these. So the city suffered declines in these 2 areas. Manufacturing decline, now that's something that's occurring nationally, statewide, and certainly in the county. And the city has a relatively small base in terms of the wholesale transportation sector, which declined in the city, but has actually been driving growth at the county level. Now, the city has a very diverse economy. One of the ways you can measure the types of industries in an economy is to use what are called location quotients, which measure the concentration of employment relative to the national average. If you have an LQ, location quotient, of 1, you're at the national average. And if you're above 1, you're above the national average. If you're below 1, you're below the national average. So, and typically when you have an LQ of over 1.2, you're considered specialized in an industry. So these are the industries based on your employment size that the city specializes in, and these would include construction. So you're a regional player in construction. You would export these services outside of the city. Retail, trade, information, professional services, educational services, arts, entertainment, and recreation, and accommodation and food services. So the city has a very high concentration of the employments. Most of these sectors are what we call resident demand-based industries. So industries like retail or arts and entertainment that primarily serve a local or regional population base. But a factor here that's this data, the most recent employment data at the sub-county level is for 2019. And so this is kind of pre-COVID, and these were clearly the sectors that were hit in COVID disproportionately. Now they're bouncing back at the state and county levels and should be bouncing back at the city level, but that data won't show up for a while. Now, in terms of your export base, these are the industries that typically drive economic development. You're specialized in information, which is Inovalon mostly, and professional services, which includes employers like FTI, Insight, the Institute for Defense Analysis. So these are your key export-based sectors. And what's important here is you really think that in this strategy, one key factor that we need to consider is the need to diversify the employment base in the city away from its reliance on residential demand-based industries and into more of these export-based sectors. Now, one thing that we also looked at for the city was the role of federal procurement. So we analyzed patterns of federal procurement at the county level. And what you'll see is that the Jacob Francis Institute is also the prime author for the upcoming county economic development strategy. And federal contracting is a core industry driver for the overall county. And the county has about 3,500 federal contractors doing about $9.7 billion, 9.6, little over, of business with the federal government. But Bowie has relatively small base of these employers. So identifying and growing the federal contractor base in terms of attracting these to office uses in the county is, again, a key issue that the city really should consider in terms of its economic development strategy. So that's kind of a very rough, high-level view of the economy. We're going to be having much more data in the report. I'm now going to switch over to the city's population. So the table on the right kind of shows the city's population relative to the state, county, and key municipal peers. And we also have income, but again, we looked at demographics and other types of factors here. But the key takeaways from the many analyses we conducted is that the city's population is growing more rapidly than the state and municipal peers, but the population is aging and is older overall in the county. So the median age in the city of Bowie is 42.7 years versus 38 in Maryland, 38.7 in Maryland, and 37.1 in the county. It's also higher than peer jurisdictions. So the city's population is aging. However, you are gaining population in the core millennial bracket, so core 25 to 34-year-old age group, which is about 12% of city population. You're having, however, a loss of your prime working age population, 35 to 54, as the city ages. Now, the city's median income is higher than Maryland in the county and all but one peer municipality, but is growing more slowly. So you have a aging, affluent population in the city. Now, we then looked at the workforce. So one of the key ways to support economic development is by tying into the workforce, in the city and as a key asset to attract employers. And here's where Bowie does really stand out. Now, the city of Bowie has significant workforce development assets. It is higher than the national and county average in terms of labor force participation. So this is the share of the population that is engaged in work activities, but it's slightly below some of the key municipalities. So again, all this data is in the appendix or will be in the report. You also stand out in terms of you have a better educated workforce than the nation, state, and most county peers, behind only Crofton. 48% of the city's population has a bachelor's degree or above, which is higher than the county and all peers but Crofton. You also are home to a large base of professional workers, many of whom work for the federal government. So 55% of the city's workforce works in professional occupations, which is higher than the county and all peers except Crofton. However, so this is a significant workforce asset. And the issue is, again, that the city remains a suburban bedroom community. 55% of city residents work outside of the county or state. So this is a very large base of people who work outside of Prince George's County, outside of Maryland, predominantly in Washington, D.C., but also Virginia. So a large number of your residents commute to jobs outside of the county. Still 5% live and work in Bowie, which is a very good number. But a key issue here is, again, you have a relatively small job base compared to many of your peers. You have roughly 3 jobs per resident in the city, which is lower than all your peers except Crofton. But about 8% of these jobs are held by residents. So again, you have a relatively limited employment base, but a very strong resident workforce base, most of whom commute outside, and tapping into this is a key asset to support economic development. Now, in terms of the city's retail capacity, we use data from ESRI on retail imports and exports. So can the city of Bowie retail base, which is very large, meet the needs of its population? And the answer is that despite this robust retail base, you still have a retail gap of millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars that leak out to surrounding areas. So there is capacity here to support the growth of the retail sector in the city. Now, finally, one of the things we really looked at in a very cursory way was quality of life measures. And it's clear here that Bowie offers significant quality of life advantages as a competitive, slightly higher cost of housing, high owner occupancy, high level of single-family homes. It's competitive in its overall cost of living, so it's higher than some peer jurisdictions, but generally speaking competitive. It has access to mass transit with about 10% of the city's population. Now, it could have more, using mass transit to get to their jobs. Now, education is an issue that Bowie is considered very strong within Prince George's County, but as we all know, that Prince George's County overall education system is seen as having some weaknesses, especially compared to neighboring jurisdictions like Howard and Anne Arundel County and Montgomery County. So, those are some of the key quality of life factors. So again, slowly growing economy, strongly growing population, highly educated population, mostly commuting to jobs outside of the city, county, and state. So now we're going to move on to kind of a very quick analysis of the retail pattern, real estate patterns in the city, looking at commercial space. Now we're looking at data from CoStar here, and this is for the Bowie area, which would include some parcels outside of the city, but the overall majority of these parcels and these real estate buildings are located in the city. And again, real estate is relatively strong in the city. It's third in terms of the retail space compared to the areas we looked at, behind College Park and Annapolis. It's fifth in office space. So that's where the city probably could support some more development. It has only about 2.2 million square feet of office space. It's second in industrial space. Some of this is located in the areas outside of the city. But again, behind College Park here. Fourth in flex space, which would be predominantly Melford here. But in terms of overall real estate issues, real estate is not really a barrier to economic development. You're competitive in cost. You have low vacancy. You've had strong absorption in 2020. Where some of the areas around you had negative absorption. Negative absorption means people leaving the buildings. So again, real estate is relatively strong in the city. I'm now going to pass the presentation over to Katie from Margrave, who's going to talk about the stakeholder engagement, and I'll move the slides, Katie, if you just ask me to move them.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard. So all of that robust information that Richard has pulled together, that was kind of task one, which is more quantitative in nature. Task two was then qualitative, so our stakeholder engagement period. We wanted to talk to key stakeholders and really see, what do you like, what don't you like, what's working, what's not working. So to date, we've held 19 interviews with various groups. Some of those have been one-on-one interviews, others have been small group interviews. Many of those interviews were with some of you all, the council members here. So thank you for taking the time. I know you wear many, many hats, but it's really helpful for us to kind of hear firsthand accounts of what's going on in the city and what are some areas that are in need of improvement. So from the stakeholder interviews alone, we had kind of 3 key findings. People like Bowie. It's got a great quality of life. People are generally pleased with it. There are some perceptions that the city might be opposed to development, or there are some barriers to development. And there was also a lot of discussion of a brand identity. Who does Bowie want to be right now? Who does Bowie want to be in the future? And how can we market that? So then our next step, Richard, you can advance, is to combine our qualitative and quantitative analyses into a SWOT assessment. Most of you, I'm sure, have utilized or perhaps even created a SWOT before, but essentially it is a strategic planning tool that's used to kind of analyze the existing conditions. And specifically what I want to draw your eyes to here is the little chart in the corner. A lot of times when we go out and we perform SWOTs, we get the question of, well, why is something a strength and not an opportunity, or vice versa? And the difference here is the origin. So strengths and weaknesses have an internal origin. There's something that we can control, something that reasonably we can have some level of influence over changing, where opportunities and threats are external. They're kind of out of our control. We might be able to do some things to kind of protect ourselves against it or encourage some of those opportunities to happen, but outside of our control. So as we go into these next couple slides, just keep that in mind, and that might explain why some items are in one category versus another. You can advance, Richard. So the next 4 slides are going to be kind of summaries. We have a full SWOT analysis that John Henry King has. He can provide it to you. We can also provide it to you. And certainly it will be in the actual strategy document that we'll be bringing to you all in March. But strengths, people like the city. High quality of life, people are pleased with city services. The city has a really positive reputation, especially compared to some of its peers in Prince George's County. This shouldn't be a surprise to any of you. For many of you, are based on perception. And so what I want to drive home here on perception is a resident or an elected official or Joe Schmo on the street may have a perception of something, but that doesn't necessarily indicate whether whatever that base issue is accurate or not. So we, sometimes there might be a perception that's accurate. Sometimes there might be a perception that's totally inaccurate. But what we can do in these situations is we can kind of look at the perception and work on strategies to change that perception if we feel like it's not an accurate perception. So some of those perception issues that came up, feelings of an anti-growth sentiment, that this bedroom community might feel unfriendly to new businesses because it tends to be more residential than commercial. Outreach to businesses was something that there was a perception. We know it's happening, but if people aren't aware that it's happening, that's something that we need to change and perhaps publicize a bit better. Go ahead, Richard. For opportunities, we've already talked on a lot of these already. To distress home, Bowie State University came up a lot in very different stakeholder interviews, not just in one type of stakeholder, but across the board. What that relationship looks like could be very different for different folks in different parts of the city, but many people came time and time again and said that is an opportunity that's untapped right now. The other thing that I want to point out about our opportunities is some of the areas that are seen as threats or weaknesses also have their converse side of being an opportunity and a strength. So as you'll see when we advance to the next slide in a second, traffic is a threat. People are expressing that it's taking a long time to get through the city due to traffic largely coming off of some of the large corridors that run through and around the city of Bowie. But the flip of that is when there's a high traffic volume, that's a lot of eyes on the street. That's a lot of visibility into the city. People drive by or drive through the city and they have that name recognition associated with the city of Bowie. And that's a great opportunity if we harness it properly. And as we move on to threats here, due to the external origin of threats, we can't always control changing these directly, but we can work to implement policy or implement programmatic changes in order to counteract or combat some of these threats that we're seeing. By and large, the county development process has been the biggest threat that we've heard. I think we came up in nearly every interview that we did. It's tough when, as a municipality, you don't hold all of that power when it comes to zoning and entitlements and permitting, things of that nature. And that's tough. There's not one quick fix to this. You all have been around this for much longer than I. You know how challenging that can be, but that still is a threat nonetheless. Another item to kind of call out specifically here is retailers leaving the city. So Richard talked about that in task one. We kind of saw some data, but especially given the market for retail right now, that's something that we're especially sensitive to. We need to find ways to counteract. One of the reasons we were brought in to do this study, as you all know, is to look at how can we provide a strategy and some action plans to help reduce the tax burden for your residential citizens. We need to improve the commercial base in order to do that. So retailers leaving the city is a threat that we absolutely need to combat. So looking at task one, task two, and our SWOT here, we have a few kind of highlights of preliminary direction that we're going. In March is when we're going to bring a draft strategy back to you all, and we will have many, many more specific action items here. Our goal is to give you items with kind of what is the item, why are we suggesting it, give you information about the budget impacts of that item. If there are partners or existing programs, we'll outline all of that for you. But some of the high-level things that we're noticing and are likely to recommend in our strategy document is expanding and diversifying our business base, making a case for public support of development, establishing linkages to business drivers, technology drivers in the county. So that's institutions of higher education. That's also federal facilities that are located in close proximity to the city of Bowie. How can we come up with some creative solutions? We're in a weird time right now, especially when it comes to retail. So what are some maybe low cost or innovative ideas we have to activate areas that might not be seeing the level of activity they were pre-pandemic? How can we create a brand? This is something you all are in the process of doing now. I know you've hired a marketing consultant who's kind of working through that. That's something we absolutely support. And then what are other ways that we can just modernize city functions to make sure we're working as efficiently as we possibly can with the limited resources that we have in City Hall? So now we open it up to you. How did we do? Do you think we're totally off base? Do you think some of these things make a lot of sense? Are we on track? Do you have other ideas? Certainly, we have this opportunity tonight to speak. We're also happy to speak with you all separately. If you want to schedule follow-up calls, if you want to submit additional comments via email, we're happy to take comments and direction in any form that's easiest for you all.
First, I'd like to say thank you for the presentation. We do appreciate you coming in, and it's obvious that you put a lot of work in, and I think it's a good start. At this time, I would like to open it up to council members if you have any questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Dufour, Wolfley?
Thank you. I had to get untangled from my mask in this complex world we live in today. It's a little tough for the less than dexterous of us. One of the things, first of all, thank you for your efforts so far, and look forward to seeing the finished work when it's ready. One of the things I found interesting and intriguing was this notion of where we stand vis-a-vis our compatriots in terms of government contractors. Can you speak a little bit more to that? I see that as a potential opportunity, and I'm curious as to what you think may be a driver for our low score in that area.
I think one of the key issues is office space availability. Now, the county, generally speaking, has developed less office space than neighboring jurisdictions, and Bowie has a base, but not a very strong base in comparison to several neighboring jurisdictions. And I think another issue is proximity to Washington in terms of mass transit. A lot of the contractor base are located in closer to metro stations, kind of in College Park in the Discovery District and other areas around there, or also surrounding the major federal facilities in Beltsville, Goddard, those types of facilities. So the question is a development of an office product that would attract them, and also some of the and kind of linking to places like Goddard and others. And this is where I think linking back in with Bowie State and some of the other technology assets in the county may also play a strong supporting role. Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's right. And I would like to spend a little bit more time over the next month looking a little bit deeper. But I think Richard, you covered it very well.
So I find that interesting in that we mentioned the lack of office space, but I think it's almost a chicken and an egg situation, because my understanding from some of the developers in the community, they indicate that office space has not been of interest in this area. And indeed, if you look at Melford, where it was going to be a science and tech center, that was the commitment of many years ago. And that has certainly shifted away from that platform for use. So I think it's not so much a question of there not being, but that there seems not to be an interest or demand in this area for it. Can you speak a little bit, or maybe I should just ask you to take a look at that hypothesis, which is that it's not so much that we have space unavailable, but rather that there's a lack of interest in space in this area. Because we do have, some high quality office space that has been vacant for some time. I know in my district over in the area right near Route 3 over there in Melford, there's space available, and I know that there's office space elsewhere too.
Sure. I guess I'll speak more in terms of what we found, because we really did a very deep dive in this at the county strategy level, and the county strategy isn't really going to be released for a couple of weeks now. But you're correct. There's a kind of lack of demand at the county level. This isn't a problem specific to the city of Bowie. At the county level, there's a real lack of demand for office space in the county. There's a very limited spec building going on. One of the key issues is there's a variety of things influencing the development. First and foremost, in today's environment, today's soon-to-be hopefully post-COVID environment, nobody's building office without pre-lease. So, and nobody knows what the demands are going to be for office. So going forward, it's going to be even harder. But I think in the past, the county's permitting process and entitlement process has been a barrier to develop of office. The county has not been seen as a key location for office users. Especially 10 to 15 years ago, the county is doing very well in areas related to College Park, Hyattsville, those types, in metro-served communities. So again, this is a county level problem, and it's again a chicken or the egg. Certainly in the next 2 years, nobody's going to build an office building without a significant pre-lease.
Richard, to add on to that, I think the other element of it is the ecosystem. So it's one thing that there is, a building or a series of buildings that have vacancy. It's another if it's in an environment and an ecosystem of businesses working collaboratively that makes it more enticing, especially right now when businesses are struggling with this question of, do we return to the office? Do we stay remote? Are we transitioning to a hybrid scenario? We need to provide a compelling reason why it makes sense for you to come back into the office and why it makes sense for that office to be located in Bowie versus elsewhere in the county or in the region.
And here's something where the transition in a real estate sense to live, work, play, or live, work, play, learn environments is what's really going to drive office, especially at the county level, especially so building in those types of amenities. The days of the suburban office park are numbered, at least in the near term. You have to have the density and amenities related to attract the users, especially in the Washington area where those users are primarily in technology, IT, those types of businesses that are really looking for a live, work, play environment. So placemaking will be a key part of our strategy.
Quick follow-up question on that. Flex space. We have seen some growth in that area here. There seems to be some strong interest. Can you speak to the impacts on the community of the economic community of flex space?
Flex space is highly desirable space right now. When you look at the county, not just the city, is doing quite well with flex. So. A lot of the different types of users, especially in technology, businesses look for flex space that can have office and maker space or office and distribution space attached to it. So it's a very highly desirable type of space, basically for the county.
Is that something that's
for the users?
Is that something that's attractive more to small or mid-sized business?
Yes. Small and mid-sized businesses would be the predominant users of flex, but not the only users, not the sole users.
And in terms of value to the economic development for our city, does it provide potential, or is it a more limited value add for utilization?
I think with a relatively low level of employment per resident, that it bringing in jobs to the city and expanding the commercial base, if that's the goal of the city, is tapping into a use base that exists and is strong in the county, in the region, in your location. So, in terms of diversifying your base, it is a use that has high demand and will help bring in new employment base.
Can you speak a little bit more about your thoughts on retail in our region? I noted that we were listed as third in terms of retail space available. Yet when I speak with my constituents, my own personal experiences, and what I see as I traverse the community, we've had an appreciable decline in terms of the quality, or at least the perceived quality of the retail landscape, either large stores leaving or going out of business, and leaving us with space that tends to be repurposed and not bespoke for a given store. Can you tell me what's happening elsewhere and what it looks, what the future looks like for reusing retail space?
I think my crystal ball in retail is probably a little cloudy right now with COVID and the changes in purchasing patterns. But we're really scratching our head kind of in the beginning, because a lot of the stuff we heard when we started this process was that Bowie has a huge retail issue. But when I did my tour with John Henry King, and when the Margrave team, who worked a lot in the area, driven around, we don't see retail vacancy. So we don't see the problems. You don't have the problems, say, of the inner beltway parts of the county with vacancy. So then in the interviews, what really came out is the question of there's a feeling that the quality of the retail use is not what the residents necessarily want. So, you have low vacancy. I don't, in terms of driving the parcels and doing my tour, don't see a huge difference between, when you're driving the storefront. So what I'm hearing is that it's what's in the stores. And so, again, this is an issue of retail is doing is most successful more in the mixed use environments at this point. Places like, say, in a suburban location like a Rio in Montgomery County, where you have office mixed with entertainment, mixed with retail, mixed with residential. So, the Bowie was developed, in the 60s, 70s, 80s in terms of a lot of its retail base, and a lot of that is being repurposed. And clearly, newer space in Crofton has sucked up some of the larger retailers. But again, many of those retailers may be limited in terms of their viability with competition. So again, I don't have a clear answer, except that mixed use, higher densities, transit access are all things that are driving retail in other parts of the county and other parts of the state.
We did hear repeatedly in our interviews the quality concerns. It's not the quantity of retail, but the quality. And the feeling that the city of Bowie, the retail establishments, should match the highest end retail establishments that are in Annapolis or in other parts of the county. I do want to spend a little bit of time as we move forward talking to some retail brokers and getting their thoughts as to why major retailers are looking elsewhere. There's got to be something behind it, because we kept hearing repeatedly that at least in our interviews, that there was a desire to have a better quality mix. And it's just not happening right now. So something's got to be driving that, and it may just be traffic. It may be as simple as that. We're seeing elsewhere, not just in Maryland, but commerce is changing dramatically. Retail is just shifting, whether it's grocery or big box stores. Everything is changing. So maybe we need to be looking at what is next in retail commerce and make Bowie the best at that.
Yeah, I would reiterate that. I think that is a major issue. I know that, I've been here for quite a number of years, almost 30, is that right? Something like that. I'm of course, a newcomer, certainly in the family. My wife grew up here, and there was always a concern with shopping, that you always left Bowie to go shop somewhere, and then, things slowly got better and better. And where we started getting meaningful retail, and including, of course, both Lowe's and Home Depot. Of course, we lost Hardware City, but anyway, I think the result is that now we're kind of seeing it go the other direction. And I think people are feeling that pain. I certainly do hear it about it from our constituents, and I'm intrigued with what you may be able to find. So please do endeavor to search out the root cause of that. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from council members?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Gardner, if I may. Yeah.
Councilman Gardner?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I do have I wanted to address both the retail as well as the government contracting. I have to go and agree with my council member and colleague, Dufour Wolfrey, in regards to we have lots of available office space ranging from Class A to Class D. We have space there in Melford. We have space on Superior Lane. We have space right around, like in a stone's throw distance from here. I would beg to say that we do not have a lot of government contractors here in Bowie simply because Bowie is not a designated hub zone, which are historically underutilized business zones to which many small government contracting firms utilize to acquire government business or to pursue government business. I'm not aware of any hub zone here in Bowie, but if there are, I would like to know if maybe we could push that information out so that perhaps those who are in the government contracting business would know that we have hub zones, or if we do not have a hub zone, I don't know the procedure. How do we apply
Mr. Gardner,
for area?
let me jump in there.
Yes.
Hub zones are awarded to areas with poverty.
Yes, correct.
We're not a poor community.
Correct, we're not.
And as I've said before in this chamber, I don't believe we aspire
to being
qualify
a poor
to be a hub zone, an enterprise zone, or any of those things. We certainly feel for those communities that need that.
Correct, we do.
That's not something that Bowie needs. That's not something I think we aspire to.
So with that being said,
we don't have that.
Yeah, so we're not likely to attract many government contracting firms.
And I would disagree with the assertion that the hub zone is the key to that. We have a number of government contractors who are here, and we're not a hub zone. Those communities cited with large presence of government contracts such as Greenbelt and College Park have some major federal entities present. Greenbelt, that's a simple one. That's NASA. If you have any dealings with NASA, you want to be as close to them as you can be.
Absolutely.
And Greenbelt has a lot of facility for them.
So
College Park gets a lot of contract presence. One, because there's this thing called the University of Maryland.
Absolutely.
Gets a lot of money.
So then you just gave me my answer as to why we do not have many government contracting firms within the city of Bowie. So we're not really poised for those.
But as has been outlined,
yeah,
we do have potentially the opportunity. We have government contractors who have chosen to come to Bowie. We have government contractors that started and grew in Bowie. Anybody remember MITRE?
Oh, wait, we have plenty. Now, my concern is that we have a lot of vacant office space, and perhaps we could market that, help many of these groups somehow market that available office space and try and fill
that's
some
why
of that.
That's what we're hoping is addressed as we get into the actions and implementation of this. When the consultants finish their work in March, they will be helping us see those paths to accomplish these things we want to do.
Okay, and now I wanted to also speak to the retail as they mentioned to us, a number of residents and our neighbors have asked for better retail, and that has been something that I have been hearing since being on the council, and eliminating the number of beauty supply stores, dollar stores, and things of that nature. You know, our income definitely could meet those higher end, better retail. And I know they said they're going to research and talk with some of the brokers and try and find out why we are not attracting better retail. Now, there were a number of stories that associated our retail with the quality of the schools and things. There are a number of factors that were in play that were shared with me previously. But I like the idea that the group saying they're going to look and reach out to some firms and getting some more definitive answers, some hardcore answers. Why is it that we cannot attract higher end retailers to Bowie? Because that is of the utmost importance. Our residents, they deserve it, and our dollars do spend. That is one of the concerns. The other thing I wanted to ask is, you mentioned that our population is aging, and I know we've been a community that hasn't built many rentals or apartments, and maybe in development has always been something that's been slower and met with reluctance. Maybe we need to look at a product that would more or less attract a younger population, because if we have an aging population and it ages out and they're gone, and that's not good either. We need this mixture. So we want to spend some time in attracting some of the youth, the younger people.
You're directing your comments toward the consultants.
Yes,
right?
I am.
Okay. We'll
Yes,
make
I
sure.
am. I'm directing my comments towards the consultants.
So I think one of the things we'll be looking at is the role of placemaking and different types of patterns of development as an attractor that would possibly include different types of residential uses. In terms of office, I do just want to point out the vacancy rate in the city is not high. It's below 10%. So in terms of federal contractors, I think attracting the fact that you have large bases of federal workers and federal contractor workers living in the city. I mean, Howard County, where I used to live, is even further from all of those places, but has a much larger federal contractor base than, say, Columbia or on Route 1. It is closer to Fort Meade, but again, some of that, we're not saying you can replace, what's in College Park or replace what's in Columbia, but you can simply attract your fair share of that, or a larger share.
Okay, and you spoke to creating more residential at our retail locations. Could you speak to that? Because I really want to understand exactly what you're suggesting.
We're saying placemaking, so different patterns of development that include mixed use is a thing that can be considered. We're not saying that it should be considered. It's just one of the things we'll be looking at is different patterns of development that do drive density, that do tend to favor some of those things. It's one of the things that we'll be looking at in the strategy as a potential thing.
Councilman, to be specific, there's a big difference between destination retail, where you get in your car and you drive, you get out of your car, you go in, shop, you go back out, you get in your car and drive away, versus going to a place where you can have dinner, go into a couple of shops. I mean, there's just different types of retail. And so looking at the various types that exist and figuring out whether or not Richard said, live, work, play, learn, there's different ways of looking at it. Whether if you build a different type of mix, whether it's, denser population or office and retail together, office and residential together, what other retail uses might want to come in there? So those are the things that I'm hoping that in some conversations with some of the bigger commercial brokers, we can hear from them why retailers might be looking elsewhere right now.
Thank you. Thank you. That is definitely my concern. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from any of the other council members?
Mr. Mayor, I have questions, but I will, in the essence of time, I'd like to email my questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Let me just start by saying thanks to all of you guys for the work that you guys have done on this. And as everyone on this council knows, this is a passion project of mine, but as a person who represents District 3, it's also really important for my constituents, since we have a bulk of the businesses and a lot of activity happening in this area. I will just want to point out one thing for the record that I think we need to make clear, and us as a council have to obviously talk about this a little bit more. But there's a real opportunity with Bowie State to do what essentially College Park and Patrick Wilhelm has done with the University of Maryland. Bowie State has a MARC project that they're working on to increase transit coming to that area. Bowie State has younger students, right? Folks that we're talking about that can actually live in our community and stay in our community, similar to what the University of Maryland does. So just as a record, for the record, I think all of us need to think seriously and hard about how we work with Dr. Bro and how we work with Bowie State in the future. So I look forward to hearing more in March about what that looks like from your view. But more importantly, I think us as a council have to start having those discussions as well. That's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other council members with any other questions at this time?
Yes, real quick, Mr. Mayor, and I really appreciate Councilman Harrison's example about keeping it short tonight, so I'm going to try and keep this super brief. If I could just ask our friends to do three things. One, I guess actually this is a question that requires an answer, not a directive. To what extent are you guys contemplating issues like road design, walkability, bikeability, as you kind of evaluate our economic development situation? Because frankly, looking at how a lot of other towns are doing business, that seems to be a major contributor. I mean, downtown Salisbury is coming to life again for many reasons, but among them is they are seriously looking at how they're designing their roads and how they're creating destination type spaces, and they're thinking about placemaking in a really deliberate way. That's a huge factor, right, for a town that doesn't have a waterfront, right, or anything like that as a draw, or like a true main street. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Is this something you're contemplating?
Katie, do you want to
It's
speak to?
absolutely part of a placemaking environment. Specifically, we're not planning on making recommendations as to these blocks of this roads need these types of interventions. That's something that requires a bit more engineering expertise than our collective group does. But absolutely, to your point, the walkability, the bikeability, those are creating those destination retail places that people are comfortable coming to, that people want to stay, and it encourages more folks to come and go. So we'll absolutely be looking holistically at that, but likely not super specific about pointed areas throughout town.
I hear what you're saying. For me, so I hope that you're hearing that retail is a big theme tonight. And in my mind, something like that, placemaking, destination creating, walkability, all that stuff is in the 21st century very central to whether you're going to have retail succeed or fail. Right, and so I recognize that you guys aren't engineers or architects or anything like that, but as you're doing your analysis and as you're giving us information, to whatever extent you're able to engage, even in qualitative analysis, right, discussions with existing commercial owners and stakeholders about this sort of thing would be incredibly helpful, because I'm really hopeful that when we get a final product, it's something we can actually really use. And if it includes something that we can take to our commercial property owners in the city and say, hey, listen, we did a study, we spent some money, this is what we're finding. We think this is going to improve your bottom line, right, as well as create spaces in the city that people are going to find attractive, so they're not driving to Annapolis to do all their eating and dining and whatever. That would be really, really helpful. So I just ask you to consider in whatever way that you can to be able to offer some feedback on that, even if it's just calling up our commercial retail owners and having conversations with them. To what extent do you guys plan on getting involved, digging deeper into the issue of permitting? Because this comes up with everyone that I got 2 frickin' HOAs that have been waiting like 2 years just to build a shed, right, and take down like a tennis court, and they're sitting in DPI limbo forever. Do you guys plan on drilling down into that? Because I'd love to be able to call up, the county executive or someone at DPI and say, hi, we have numbers. Can you please fix this? Can someone please fix this? Because it's killing us.
Apart from discussing its impact, we're not really doing a study of the role of county permitting and how it impacts Bowie. The county's permitting environment has improved, but significantly, but has, as you've mentioned, significant ways to go. But other than mentioning it as an issue, we cannot really talk about how the county permitting process, we can talk about how it impacts you, but we don't really know how to fix that one.
I hear what you're saying. Again, I hear it from HOAs. I hear it from the biggest developers in the state. DPI always comes up. And if we can't talk about DPI, that's like, we can't talk about the reason why the house is on fire, it's all that lead paint or whatever, it's central. So to whatever extent that this can be thought about, that's critical, because that's a huge pillar for so many of our problems, and we're on the border of Anne Arundel County, and the tax difference isn't huge between Anne Arundel and Prince George's, not nearly as big as I think people think, but the permitting one is very huge, and that comes up all the time from everyone. And then my last point, and I don't really have a question about this, I just also encourage you, obviously, to drill down into Old Bowie. That's the closest thing the city has to a truly kind of historic downtown. It's starting to come alive again. We're putting some serious thought and efforts, a lot of it volunteer efforts, into restarting events there. They're working on trying to check the boxes necessary for an arts and entertainment district. That's a long-term project. I don't know if you guys have any early thoughts about Huntington, Old Town Bowie, or not so far in your work, but that's definitely an area where I think all of us are going to be really, really, really interested in some thoughts and some deep diving.
Thank you, Councilman. Anyone else, any follow-up questions at this time? Okay, hearing none. Thank you for your presentation and your information. I will be contacting you with some of those issues and sharing some more information as we talked about. And again, thank you for coming in this evening.
Mayor, this was publicized as advertised as a public hearing. So if you just make the public hearing announcement.
I would like to, I would like to at this time open the public hearing. Do we have any comments at this time? Any participation?
Oh, sorry. No, we do not, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Hearing none, we are closing the public hearing. Okay, well, thank you so very much for coming this evening. And we look forward to talking with you in the near future. And again, I will be communicating with you, and appreciated the insight that you gave us tonight. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, council members.
All right, we will now move on to item B of new business, and that's the budget guidance for fiscal year 2023. And I will turn it over to the city staff.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council and residents out there. As you know, the charter requires the city manager to present a budget to the City Council for consideration in the first week of April. And we are about to launch into that process amongst the directors and senior office leaders in earnest in February in order to get to the 1st of April. What we would like to do, what we are endeavoring now to get from you all is some guidance or from individuals or consensus so that those things can be considered by the city manager and the staff, and financially, if financially feasible, we can present those to you. That's the reason why we're presenting this, and I'd like to hand it over to our esteemed finance director, Byron Matthews, to take it on right now. Byron?
Thank you, Al. Let's see if I can share my screen here.
Good evening, Mr. Matthews.
Good evening, Mayor. Let me see if I can, let's see. Just open this up and stuff. Okay. Good evening, Mayor, City Council.
Byron, if you could put this into full screen mode.
Okay, hold on for 1 second. Are you not seeing my full screen?
I am not seeing your screen at all now.
Well, let's see here. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yes, but it isn't in the full screen, but we do see.
Okay, let me see if I can just open it up here and move into. Well, it doesn't seem to allow me to move in full screen here. But I think this is the best that I'm going to be able to do because I'm not seeing it. To enlarge it, are you seeing the presentation, Council?
We do. We see it as a somewhat split screen, but I think we'll make do with what you have, Byron.
Okay, I apologize for that. We'll just.
There
How
you
about
go.
now?
That's it.
All right, then. Thank you. Again, good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, we're here for the budget policy guidance. I won't spend a lot of time going over the slides. You've had the presentation, and I'm sure you're quite familiar with the presentation at this point. I wanted to start off by just talking about the council and management responsibilities. And the goal is here that we have proposed revenues meet or exceed our proposed expenditures. Thus, we would have a balanced budget for the year. The meeting purpose tonight is to establish a framework for the FY23 budget. And basically, we're referring to revenues, expenditures, and a use of the fund balance. Our second purpose is to establish budget priorities and parameters. This deals with our budget limitations, our transfers to other funds, and fund growth. The next emphasis would be to understand the importance of our CIP tool. It ensures that new projects begin in the out years unless projects are emergencies. We must consider the long-term recurring operating cost of adding new projects. We must also consider debt affordability. And at this point, our debt margin is about 58% availability. And we established that debt margin by looking at 10% of our revenues. And we look at our debt service payment against that 10% of revenues. And that gives us our debt margin. So our debt margin in this fiscal year is $3,229,000. Our next bullet is consider increasing property tax. Mayor and Council, as you know, with the adoption of the FY22 budget, in this budget was programmed incremental tax increases. 46 cents for FY23 and 24, 49 cents for FY25 and 26, and 52 cents for FY27. The next screen deals with the budget framework. The framework is to establish a property tax rate for FY23. Again, to examine all new capital projects. 3, examine the funding strategy for equipment acquisition and replacement fund. Establish new water and sewer rates. And reaffirm our core services. Impacts to those budget frameworks, to the budget framework, is pandemic concerns. And we highlight those as the effects of COVID, the cost of inflation, and the effect of the supply chain has on our particular expenditures. And with that, we know that we're expecting inflation to be anywhere between 3 to 6% for the next calendar year. So thus, we must consider those things as we're moving into the calculation of where our budget expenditures will lie for FY23. The next slide is just a budget schedule. It kind of gives us a pattern of activities that we'll follow. In January, we have the meeting that we're having this evening, the budget guidance meeting. We will also have staff begin to look and develop their goals for the upcoming year. January and February, as the city manager indicated, we will begin to meet with department heads to analyze new projects, evaluate the progress of continuing projects, and also determine the operating costs needed to set priorities for FY23. In the month of March, Finance will pull that information together along with revenue projections and assemble the proposed budget book. The presentation of the proposed budget book will be made in April, and we hope to go through the meetings in the month of April and May and adopt the budget late May. One of the things that makes Bowie a success is our budget guidance as it relates to fiscal policies. Council, you're definitely familiar with this, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over the financial policies. But as you know, our capital financing mechanism is basically pay as you go. That means we save, then we spend. Debt management, we have ratios that we need to make sure that we stay within. As I indicated earlier, that deals with 10% of our revenue. Fund balance, we have a fund balance policy that our fund balance will not go below 25% of our expenditures. On the revenue and expenditure side, we provide council each year 5-year projection of all the revenues and expenditures, both for the general fund and the water and sewer fund. In addition, we have to set the annual rates for the water and sewer fund, which is a proprietary fund, and it's a self-sufficient fund, and it runs by only the customers it serves. We also look at our one-time recurring revenues, and we use those for capital projects should we have any surplus, which is normally sale of property or some additional capital grants. The next slide shows you the current CIP transfers from the general fund. And I bring this stat up basically so that you can understand how much money we're transferring or we propose to transfer based off our FY22 budget for the out years. And in doing so, I want council and the mayor to understand that 1 cent on the tax rate equals $846,000. So you can see that in FY23, it'll be a little under a 2% increase just to cover the capital transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund. More on the capital spending. Our priorities are the EPA, Chesapeake Bay projects that we have, special taxing districts, facility maintenance, the ice arena, basketball courts, golf course, our water pipe recapitalization program. The next bullet is do we set moratoriums on new projects that we have that are already programmed in our CIP? We need to take time to make sure that we are analyzing the projects properly, determine if some of those projects can be canceled. Funding for our CIP, we have about 11.6 million of bond proceeds, which council has already indicated that will be directed to the ice arena project. Now, funding of our CIP happens in 3 ways: bond issuance, loans, state and federal grants, user fees, and general fund transfers. The next slide deals with trends of major revenue sources over the last 10 years. So this chart shows you the general fund revenues and expenditures over the last 10 years, ending in FY21. The fund balance increased by $2.2 million. The assessable base in the city of Bowie, as everyone wants their assets to grow, it's continuing to increase. We're seeing 4 to 5% increase in the assessable base. As of FY ending June 30th, excuse me, that amount was $7.7 billion of value. Our next slide deals with the major revenue categories: state shared revenues, all other revenues, and property tax. What's included in the state shared revenues is income tax, admissions and amusement taxes, motor vehicle taxes, police protection, and financial corporation tax. State share revenue for FY21 totaled $15.1 million. Property tax totaled $32.1 million, and all other revenues totaled $11,600,000. The next slides are more detailed information on the topics I just covered. Income tax over the last 10 years. As you can see, we've had steady growth. Highway user revenue, steady growth. Speed camera infractions. As this revenue source has gone down over the years, and we expect it to as people become aware of the traffic patterns within the school areas. We did have an uptick in FY21. Our next chart deals with our fund balance. As you can see, our fund balance over the last 10 years. Fund balance ended with $41.3 million in FY21. Budget guidance. The city's financial position is strong, as demonstrated by the affirmation of the city's AAA bond rating from all three rating agencies. Audited financial statements as of June 30th, 2021, the general fund balance totaled $41.4 million. The unassigned fund balance equaled $23.2 million. The unassigned fund balance is the money that we have available to cover future operations and future capital expenditure. Mayor and Council, this concludes my presentation for budget guidance. It is staff's hope that we would get direction from you as to where you want the city to be, your insights on dealing with water rates, property tax rates, capital projects, and just the overall operation of the city. I'm available to entertain any questions that you might have. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Hey, thank you so very much, Byron, for that presentation. You covered a lot there. Byron, if we could, just for a summation, if I could just ask this. As we look at where we are with our current tax rate and with the projections of property values, as you can use your crystal ball as what we imagine them to be increasing, how much do you see there? Do you see property values continuing to increase? I assume that that's the assumption we're going to be making.
Yes, Mayor. It is based on history and based on the way things are going. Our property tax values probably will increase because we do have a cap there, 4 to 5% for FY23. That normally works out to a little less than $1 million.
Okay. Thank you, Byron. What do you see if we were to go with the basic CIP, the projects we have in store, those things? Can you give us a differential of what we're looking at right now that we would need as far as revenues and going into the general fund to assist us at this point, just with what we've already identified?
Mayor, the answer to that question is quite difficult at this time because I'm not aware totally of the new projects that are going to be requested for FY23. Council has put in place that the $11.6 million be designated for the Bowie Ice Arena. So as I stated earlier in my presentation, all other revenue to support any capital projects would have to come from a transfer, bond issuance, a loan, user fees, or federal and state grants.
Okay, and Byron, I understand what you're saying there, and I'm just saying, as you talked about with the ice arena and those things in there, before we added any additional, and I get what you're saying. The whole reason for this is for us to be able to talk about what we might do more. But if we were to just freeze right where we are right now, no additional capital projects, if we would just hold steady where we are with what we know now, i.e. trying to fund those projects out now. As you do a good job of allocating the resources now for the future and all, can you give me just a general idea of where we stand? Are we looking at a deficit there already?
Mayor, I would like to give you a nice rosy answer, but as you know, over the last several years, the city has continued to use its fund balance in order to balance the budget. Okay? And at some point in time, we're going to have to look at the tax rate. And if we're looking at the tax rate, we also have to look at what moves that tax rate. Now, we're already committed to some increases through our labor agreements. Those are going to happen automatically. The other things that happen is that what do we need to fund the current projects that are already being worked on, okay? So there are projects in the out years that have no cost spent yet, that yes, they can be delayed, but you know, as we delay, project costs go up higher. So a lot of it is maybe deciding what it is that we just cancel. What is the best projects to have? And we'll hear better of that, and I'll be able to address that as we're going through the budget phase. The city manager will have a stronger handle on what projects he would like to bring forward to council. And I know that he has his eye focused on bringing you a balanced budget.
Understood. Okay, thank you, Byron. I wasn't able to tie you down on anything just now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Are there any other questions from any other council members at this time? Comments?
Mr. Mayor, I just have a couple of things that I'd like to add, if that's okay.
Go right ahead, Councilwoman Harris.
Thank you. I did want to just talk about how I believe that our environmental, as you all know, our Environmental Advisory Committee and Green Team subgroup developed a climate action plan for 2020-2025, which we approved. But in my opinion, we as a council have made no real moves toward implementation. I'm sorry, I can't compete with your conversation. And as we have and continue to hear about the devastating effects of climate change on our country and globally, we just can't afford to be left behind. Therefore, I believe we need to make a stronger commitment towards climate change and adopt standards and support ideas in that regard as outlined in our CAP. The first item I propose is that we include in the budget a full-time position of the Director of Sustainability, who would be responsible for the ongoing development, update, and implementation of the climate action plan for the city. And the director would report to the city manager and provide an annual report to the council. I believe this person is necessary to keep us on track on what we need to do to mitigate the effects of climate change in the city. I do want to say that I appreciate the work of the EAC and the Green Team, but they definitely need to know that the council has their back and that we are serious about putting action towards climate change. And just the second item I'd like to propose is also a nature exploration area for children. If we could identify some property in the city to convert to an exploration area, which would be significantly different from a park. We're looking at a Brookside Manor, Brookside Park like in Montgomery County, or even Clearwater National Center at Casca Regional Park. But I just believe we need to, take more ownership of our climate action plan, certainly host educational and informative discussions with the residents as noted in our CAP. Those are the things I'd like to include as proposed items to include in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Councilmember, you go. No, go ahead, Councilmember.
Sure?
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know, I got a lengthy list. I don't know.
Well, mine is very, I'll make mine very brief then. I'd like to just echo those words of Councilmember Harrison and being supportive of those two items that she wants to move forward, and definitely exploring that and truly informing the EAC as well as our green team that we are supportive of the environment and your initiatives completely. Thank you, Councilmember Wolfley.
Councilmember Wolfley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple comments. Thanks very much for the update on where we stand. Thank you to my colleagues as well. A couple of things. Mr. Matthews, can you speak for a moment on where you anticipate property taxes going? I know we've got a continued growth the last couple of years. Can you speak to where we are in the cycle for assessments and what it may look like over the next couple of years?
Again, thank you for the question. Our property tax assessments are limited to 5% growth. So in times of a good economy, we can look for property tax growth up to 5%.
So do you think that's where we are right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's good news. Another item that I saw that was good news, but it reflects a decrease overall trend, is traffic ticket revenue, although I did note that it was up a bit the most recent year. But that's good news. It's good to see people taking heed and driving more slowly. So that's a source of revenue I'm glad to see decline. The other items I have here, an assortment of things in no particular order, so please indulge me. The first is, our plan for recovery money to be used for our water system. We anticipate, obviously, the city manager spoke earlier this evening, so I continue to expect to see that as a priority, and I know we have a water system in much need of that, and we have that recovery money that'll be coming in. So I think it's good to earmark that for that purpose.
Councilman Wolfley, if I could just talk about the state and local recovery funds.
Please, thank you.
We have received $2.4 million of that within the last fiscal year. We're expecting to receive the second tranche of that in May of this year. The pandemic on the city, based on the formula given to us by Treasury, the city lost about $3.3 million in revenue from the effects of the pandemic. And one of the main uses of those funds is to replace lost public sector revenue. So I just want to bring that to the surface. That would leave us about $1.4 million to allocate to the water recapitalization program. However, council can direct us, and if that's what I'm hearing, that the entire 4.7 million be directed to the water capitalization program, staff is ready to do that.
Byron, let's let Mr. Wolf finish with his list. I mean, when the time comes for financing the next phase, we'll look at several aspects of it to include the ARPA money.
Thank you. I do in fact think that it's probably a good use of those funds, in large part because we have weathered the storm. Despite the expenses, we've managed to keep head above water in this time. So, you know, as we're looking at funding for the water, I do think that that would be a good thing to use that recovery money for. And whether it's the entirety of the 4.7 or something close to it or what have you, I think it would be a good use of the money. It's, I think, been earmarked as such as a viable use or an allowable use of that money. And we obviously have an accelerated plan, which I'm looking forward to. So we'll look forward to that. Let's see, compost. I know we had a compost program that we were rolling out, and then we ended up with COVID knocking on our door, so we moved back a little bit on that. So I would like to see that move forward again and get us into the compost business. And I know that our staff has already had some work done on that, but it got waylaid. So as we're doing objectives for the year, I'd like that to be in there to the extent that we don't get it back up and running or progressing for this fiscal year.
You're referring to the food compost program pilot that we.
Yes, sir.
Well, gotcha.
Next thing is there's a series of EV-related items here that I'm interested in pursuing as well. We have made great progress. We have some new charging stations in place. Great work by the staff, working collaboratively with BG&E and others to advance that effort. We have additional vehicles in place presently, which is really great news. I think kind of the next step, one of the things we should be looking at is encouraging our employees at the individual level to drive EVs. So looking at options for employee EV charging at the workplace. I don't know what it would look like. I don't have an idea on what the program. That's certainly open for thinking that one through. It may involve charging a fee for it. It may involve providing it free as a de minimis cost. But I think we ought to ensure that we are EV friendly for our employees. I think we may find, particularly at the beginning, that the cost of trying to recover the expense, charging employees when you only have a handful of them that may be using it to get-go may not be worth putting in place any charging mechanism. By that I mean cost recovery mechanism that might wait until a little bit later. So maybe it's a situation where we start off with free charging for employees for a year or two and then move it into charging for the charging, if you will. EVs for fleet replacement, I know that we've been doing well on that, so I'd expect to continue seeing that progress as appropriate as vehicles age out, to look at EVs as a priority replacement vehicle. One of the items I'd like also is for us to put in place some type of signage for EV charging locations in Bowie. We have EV charging at a number of the shopping centers. We have them here. We have them over at the old City Hall location. It would be, I think, very beneficial to let our residents know that infrastructure exists. And unlike a gas station, most EV charging stations don't have a big old sign out front that everybody drives by and goes, oh, there's the gas station. So I think it would be a good idea to help educate people on the road with some appropriate signage. Something else that's out there for our environmental improvement as well is improving our accessibility for bikes. I think this is something that's going to take a little bit of effort and it may not take much expense, but working with our retail centers to work with them to see if we can get some enhanced bike racks and so forth at stores and shopping centers and the like. Again, I'm not sure we need to spend a lot of money on it, but I think it'd be good for folks to have that option. When you ride to Hilltop Plaza, have a place to lock it up, if you will, because that's a little difficult. We have the Pope's Creek rail line as an objective. I'd like to see in our planning department work on formalizing some infrastructure to advance that into a rails to trails program. I'm not sure what that looks like, but in terms of establishing some support infrastructure to advocate for converting that from rail to from rails to trails. It will obviously include some outreach to other parts of the state and whatnot. But I think if we want to see that happen, it needs to start with us.
I want to make sure I understand what you're talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
The Polk Creek Park there, right?
No, actually, the Pope's Creek rail line that heads from Bowie on down to the Potomac, that rail line will be coming to an end in terms of its utilization. There are 2 power plants that use coal. One has been closed, or it's shut off its coal, and I believe one of them is converting to natural gas, and the other is closing altogether. So that will obviate the need for those rail tracks for their current use, and it would be nice if we could turn that into a trail that would lead from the Potomac all the way up to Bowie, give a purpose, a destination for the old town Bowie area, and incorporate that into the trails. Obviously, much bigger than just our neighborhood.
So currently, the railroad owns that's not their property, right?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
That's really hard with the railroad. You know?
It is.
I'm just saying.
It is indeed.
Especially when they own something, because the law is also. Okay, well, gotcha.
Yep.
All right.
And this is. I don't expect that we'll.
This will be a long-term project.
Yes, sir. Yep. Absolutely. I expect that this will be a long time coming when it finally comes to fruition. But I do think there's an opportunity for us there.
All right.
Grant writer, I'd like to make sure that there's a grant writer focusing on the water issue, in whatever we can get, wherever we can get it. We've had some success, I understand, up at the gym and other locations with managing levels of utilization with our current distinction between residents and non-residents. So I think that's good. We need to continue that. I'd like.
We intend to keep that up.
Excellent. I've had some issues raised from constituents on sidewalk right-of-way maintenance, and I think we've addressed some with some tree pruning, cleaning, clearing type of things. But I think this is going to be a growing problem, and we'll likely need some attention, perhaps again out of the planning department.
Well, I want to make sure I understand what the problem is. If the problem is that existing sidewalks that need to be maintained.
Existing sidewalks that need to be maintained in terms of grass that's growing over them, so the width of a sidewalk turns into about half the width because of overgrown grass. There may be shrubs infringing on the right of way of the going, on the sidewalk passing by, or trees hanging, branches hanging too low.
We can talk about it in the budget, but that's a day-to-day operation issue. If you could get us the locations, we could work with code and our streets division to sign to maintain sidewalks, and we can, because it sounds like it's a bit of a homeowners encroachment issue on the right of way, and we can deal with that on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent, thank you. New traffic cameras, I know that we're doing some ongoing work on that.
The chief's working on that right now.
Excellent, thank you. Priorities, some of the things you've spoken about, Mr. Matthews, you mentioned the issue of priorities for capital improvements. From my standpoint, I think the ice rink and the golf course are just top of the list, and I think the rest of them tend to fall off after that. In terms of urgency being kind of the driver there, we'll have to we'll have to address all of them, of course, but I think those are the two most urgent. Let's see. I think, keeping taxes flat, I'm still hearing from constituents that's a desire for folks. I do know, Mr. Matthews, you spoke to the issue of our fund balance. I know that a lot of our constituents feel that the fund balance is prepaid taxes. So we do have that available for us and want to sustain that to the extent we can, keep our taxes flat. And there was already mention of sustainability. I think that is that's the end of my lengthy list. So I do appreciate the good work the staff has done in the past and will continue to do as you guys work through the budget process.
Make sure I got one question. You said your CIP was ice rink and golf course?
Yep.
Okay, got it.
And thank you.
You're on mute, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other council members at this time?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a couple things.
Go right ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, sir. I love following Councilmember Wolfley at these meetings because I can just say, and everything he said. So I'm going to say that. I just have a couple things I do want to highlight. One, for next year, I would like the city to make sure it has money aside in case it's needed to, again, support the Old Town Bowie Festival. I'm beginning to hear from the planners. They're working on getting outside partners, but given the success and the importance of that event to the Old Town area, I want to make sure having the funds available if needed.
Yeah, we intend to plug that in.
Okay, that's
line item
perfect.
for that. We're on board with them.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Let's see. Another thing, I don't know if this is necessarily going to impact our budget at all, but I do want us to start talking about, and maybe this is a good topic for our strategic planning session in a couple weeks, assembling a task force to make sure that we're actively working on the acquisition of the racetrack property. That'll be conveyed to us in 2024, and I want to make sure to the best extent possible we're ready to go beyond just kind of the impressions we've gotten from residents that we have a serious plan for that property as best as we can. Again, I'm not sure what the budget impact is on this, but I've gotten a lot of feedback on code compliance. A couple things. One, people love code compliance insofar as they want, code enforced. But two, the initial outreach letter that people are getting is coming across as a little harsh, especially in situations where it's a warning or it's something fairly easy to resolve. I'm wondering if code can take a look at the initial letter they put out and just find a way to make the tone a little bit more friendly, a little bit more of a, hey, this is a heads up, rather than making it sound so legalistic, because a lot of people are getting a little irked by those initial letters. They're still complying, but they're finding them a little harsh.
Well, Mr. Estep, for a guy who received one of those about 7 years ago, I was guilty of cutting my grass before 7 o'clock in the morning. And it didn't, but we'll certainly look to soften the letter up but get the point across.
Well, I know the neighborhood you're in, and I'm shocked you didn't hear about it from the HOA first. They probably
HOA,
a heck of a lot harsher.
I'm sure one of my neighbors turned me in.
Yeah,
because
not
it's
surprised.
5:30. What can I tell you? But we'll soften up. Yeah, I'm in the Army. I get up early. Right?
Well,
I can stay up
we'll leave that where it is.
I can stay up that late, but I can't get up that early.
Well, I never did it again. I got the letter. I said, okay, you're right. So first I went and read the code, of course. Then I think if people do that, they'll be okay. But we'll certainly soften the letter up in a serious note to make sure we don't offend anybody when we ask for compliance.
I appreciate that. On the subject of code compliance, I don't know if this is something that Sally plans on asking for this year. I do know that their workload is pretty considerable, and I am wondering whether or not we need to start thinking, if not this year, in future years, having an additional FTE for additional code compliance officers.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, we often have residents who would like for us to patrol the neighborhoods and see things. But right now, I think we have 8.5, maybe 8.5 FTEs in the code department to deal with 18,000 residences, of which, and most of our business is referrals from neighbors, like my neighbors referred them to me. but we could probably use another 3 code enforcement officers at least if we wanted to try to be more proactive about enforcement rather than being reactive, which is what we have to do now because it's such a small force.
Yeah, and I think based on, and I kind of get that, you know, just hiring more code officers for the sake of hiring more code officers doesn't make sense. You know, one's probably not going to make a difference from going from that reactive to proactive posture. You're probably going to need more than that. But if that's something that staff can explore and at least give us some options on,
We'll
a sense
take a
of
look
what
at
it's
that.
going to cost, that'd be helpful. Again, maybe not something we can do this year, but something to consider in future years, because when I get feedback on code, it's overwhelmingly we want more of it. So thank you. Vegetation is a huge thing that comes up as it relates to the stormwater management ponds. We went and dug in a bunch of places, not because we felt like it. I have to constantly remind people, but because the EPA told us we had to. Folks are asking if we can consider improving the vegetation around those ponds so that it's a little bit more hidden and there's kind of a better aesthetic quality to it. I don't know what our options are on that front, but if we could explore that, I think several of my colleagues and I would be okay with those projects costing a little bit more if it meant making sure we just had some vegetation so that these giant ditches in the ground looked a little bit prettier, you know, just kind of, you know, as you're walking by them. Let's see. I apologize, Councilman Wolfley preempted me on a bunch of these, but I wanted to not miss anything important. I think that's it. I appreciate it, and I will follow up by email if I stumble on something in my notes that I missed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Gardner. I want to, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, like Councilman Wolfley mentioned as regarding to ICE, I also want to, I support that as well, and I want to encourage the support or ask for the support for courts as well, ICE as well as courts. I don't know if, I know I was just conversing with Councilwoman Harrison, and we were looking through some previous notes, and we would like that to also be in consideration.
Well, as you may be aware.
I thought we had put it, but I wanted to be certain of it. Yeah, but we would have to.
We asked for a study.
Yeah, we asked for a study, but we would have to include this in the CIP as well now, correct? Yeah, okay.
Well, yes. The fact that you all requested the study, we're currently assessing the properties in the vicinity of the golf court to see if it's suitable for an indoor court. And of course, because of that, it has to be in the CRP project for that and the potential design.
Okay, so then we would need to add that to the CIP.
It's going to be added.
It will be in there. Okay, I just wanted to.
Once you all gave us the assignment, it became a CIP project.
I wanted to be certain that it was here in my head, and I wanted our viewing public to know as well that we are supportive of both.
I'll use affirmative.
Yes.
It's there.
Thank you, City Manager. It is there. So everyone who's listening and watching, it is there. Courts are in the CIP, and we're going to make sure that ICE is there as well. Thank you, council members. Thank you. And City Manager. Well, and Mr. Mayor.
I only have one thing. I mean, I realize that what Byron was saying is that we have an operational mission, general service delivery for sure. And then we have our CRP projects. I think last year we transferred $3 million from the fund balance using the monies that had been set aside for the 2-sheet ice rink to this. So now we don't have that $11 million to draw from. So we're going to have to draw from our fund balance. I would like to go on record saying this. You know, we're going to take, if we do it, keep it at where it was last year, $9 million from the fund balance. And it's simple arithmetic, as it is. You can argue it was prepaid taxes, but in 3 years or 2.5 years, whoever's working then, I'm not sure I'm going to be working that long in my life. there's, some council maybe have their back against the wall and simply have to make a choice of increasing the tax, the millage rate, or cutting services or something. So that's Byron's and I's fiduciary responsibility to say that because we want, we have to pay for these things, and we haven't had a millage rate increase. I won't use a tax word because I know that's a bad word. I think we're coming up on 13 years. That's extraordinary, but we do have money, but we're going to have to spend it. That fund balance will be depleted in 2.5, 3 years.
Thank you, City Manager. Any other questions before I go? Any other council member? Just a couple of things I'd like to ask, and bear with me if it's already been done and I missed whatever. I know we had talked before about getting a contract specialist to assist the city in all of our contracts and other things. Where are we on that now?
Oh, we're actively recruiting that person, and that person will be, whenever we get this person, we'll be in the finance under the supervision of Mr. Matthews. But we are having, in general, difficulties recruiting in this current economy, because some people argue why, but I don't know why. But we are actively recruiting and trying to get the best person to come in and do that job.
Yeah. So we don't need to do anything additionally about funds or anything.
No, we just have to continue to be aggressive. We're having difficulties recruiting in every phase of the city, and we're better at it than others. For example, I know in Rockville they were offering signing bonuses to trash collectors. They had to modify their trash collection issues because it's just hard to find people. People with CDL licenses or premium. You conduct a recruitment, the best person, you want to pick them, and that person has 3 other options because there's so many people looking for them. And you make the offer, well, yeah, and for example, somebody says, well, I want to telework in Philadelphia for the whole year. Well, and so, or something, or they get a better job offer. But this unemployment rate is really low. And the fact that there was a lot of free money out there, and I guess some people left the work marketplace, and I'm not sure, but this is one of those situations where we're having to recruit. We're making progress, but it's really difficult.
That's good to hear, City Manager. The second thing is when we had done our Black Lives Matters and others, one of the things we told the constituents we were going to be doing is having a review, an outside review of our policies for equity and inclusion. Have we put that or not? I'd like to see that put into the budget so that we can have that done as we told our citizens we do, okay?
We'll make sure that's in this budget here.
Hey, thank you very much. Any other council members, anything at this point? Hearing none, I just want to say, as always, thank you so much, city staff, city manager, Mr. Matthews, Daniel, all the presentations and presenters, and to the city council. Thank you for your time and efforts, and to the citizens for working through with this.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank you all for the input. This is the best dialogue I've had since I've been here, as far as now I know I have a better grasp on what my priorities can be as I work to present you all a balanced budget in April. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Having said that,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn and move to closed session. To adjourn to closed session under statutory authority of the Maryland Annotated Code, State Government Article subsection 3-305 B7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice.
Second.
It's been moved that we, and second, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none. Again, thank you, everyone. We'll adjourn and move into closed session. To all the citizens, again, stay safe.